I inherited my grandfather's house, but the tapes I found inside predicted my every move. Each word pulled me closer to the basement, where a voice I knew too well was already waiting for me. I never thought inheriting a house could feel like inheriting a curse, but from the moment I stepped onto the creaking porch of my grandfather's property, I knew the place was not simply for walls and a roof left to me out of sentiment or convenience. It was something else, something deliberate. Something that breathed its own slow, suffocating rhythm. I had not seen my grandfather in his final years. He was a quiet man, withdrawn after my grandmother died, and the family stopped visiting. As much so when the lawyer told me the old house on the outskirts of town was mine, I imagined it as nothing more than a dusty relic, maybe even a blessing. I was 23, restless, tired of cheap apartments. And the thought of owning even a decaying two-story with ivy strangling the brick seemed like fortune. The drive out there was long, the roads narrowing until street lamps disappeared, and the silence of the countryside pressed in. The house rose at the end of a gravel lane, hunched and brooding, its windows black like empty eyes. As I unlocked the swollen front door, the hinges screamed, and the first breath I drew inside was thick with dust and something metallic that coated the back of my tongue. The furniture had not been touched in decades, heavy oak pieces crowding the room's curtains, faded to yellow bookshelves groaning with forgotten titles. But in the study where my grandfather had spent most of his days, I found a cardboard box shoved under the desk, as though he had wanted it hidden, but not too well. The masking tape had long since dried. I pulled it apart, and inside were neat stacks of audio cassettes, each labeled in my grandfather's sharp handwriting. The first one, "Read for you." Curiosity itched through me, and I dug until I found an old cassette player wedged in a closet, its plastic yellowed, the play button stiff with age. I set the first tape inside, pressed it down, and static filled the room before a voice cut through, a voice that made my stomach tighten. My grandfather's voice, younger, steadier than I had ever known him to be. "Hello," he said. "If you're hearing this, then the house is yours. I know that because it had to be, and right now you're sitting in the study with the box on your lap. You've already opened it, and you're listening carefully, wondering how I know." My mouth went dry. I glanced around the room at the shadows creeping along the corners as though expecting someone to be watching me. The voice continued, "You just lean back, your right hand is hovering near the pause button. Don't press it, you'll want to, but if you do, you'll never hear what comes next." My fingers jerked back from the cassette player as though burned. My heart hammered against my ribs. I whispered, "What the hell?" But the tape droned on, calm, steady, inevitable. "You're thinking this must be a trick. Maybe." I recorded generic guesses, "but soon you'll understand that I am speaking only to you, and only now." Silence bled through the speakers before the tape clicked to an end, leaving me with nothing but the creak of the old house and the echo of his words. I told myself it was a coincidence, an elaborate prank, maybe some forgotten game my grandfather had prepared. But deep down, a thread of unease coiled tight. I should have stopped there, boxed the tapes away, and walked out, but instead I loaded the next cassette, this one dated 15 years before I was born. Again his voice filled the room, this time firmer, darker. "Today you unpacked your bag upstairs. You stood by the window and stared at the woods and wondered if anyone was out there watching you. Don't bother checking, you won't see them, not yet." I froze, gooseflesh racing up my arms, because 10 minutes earlier that was exactly what I had done. I remembered the strange sensation of being observed as the wind whispered through the trees. How could he know decades before I existed? I shoved the player off the desk, my pulse thundering. The cassette clattered out, but I could not stop staring at it, lying there like a poisonous thing. I tried to laugh it off, tried to imagine my grandfather as some eccentric old man who made predictions, recorded messages for some future descendant. But the accuracy cut too close. It was not guessing, it was describing memory. The rest of the night I could not sleep. Every creak in the house sounded amplified, the pipes groaning like distant footsteps, the floorboards shifting as though under someone's weight. When I finally drifted into a shallow doze, I dreamed of the tapes multiplying, the reels unraveling across the floor, tangling around my arms and throat. I woke sweating, with the morning light leaking through grimy curtains, determined to leave. I packed my bag, carried it downstairs, but on the kitchen table sat another cassette, not one from the box, but a new one, unlabeled, gleaming with fresh plastic as though placed there recently. My chest tightened. I picked it up with shaking hands and slid it into the player. His voice again, "Good morning. I know you didn't sleep well. I know you want to run, but you can't, not yet, because you haven't heard everything. You'll try the door now. Go on, and when you do, you'll see the lock doesn't turn." I lurched to the front door, twisted the knob, yanked the deadbolt, but it would not budge, jammed as if welded shut. Panic spread cold through me. I pounded at it until my fists ached, but the wood held firm. From the cassette his voice murmured, "Don't waste your strength. The house keeps you until it's time." I staggered back, gasping. "The tape whirring on your grandfather kept the truth from everyone, even from himself. But I've told you because you're the one meant to hear it. You're the one meant to choose what." I shouted, but the tape had already clicked off, leaving me in silence. I collapsed onto the stairs, burying my face in my hands. What was happening? Was I losing my mind? Had isolation and grief twisted my perception? Yet no matter how much I tried to rationalize, the evidence loomed physical, undeniable. The cassettes existed. They spoke to me, not some vague descendant. Me specifically. That afternoon I scoured the house, searching every room for another tape. I found them tucked in odd places, under floorboards, behind books, between folded sheets, each one describing my movements in chilling detail. You're reading this now, you're frowning, you're about to drop the tape in shock, and I did, each prediction a perfect mirror of my actions, until I began to dread doing anything at all, afraid the tape had already told me what I would do. Eventually I lost track of how many I had listened to. The days blurred together, time devoured by the endless unraveling of his voice. I barely ate, I barely slept. I existed only To hear the next instruction, the next prophecy, and every message seemed to guide me closer to one place, the basement. The door was always locked with a heavy iron latch, and I avoided it instinctively. The air near it colder, the wood swollen with damp, but every few tapes my grandfather's voice circled back to it like gravity pulling me down. Soon, he would say, soon you'll stand before the door, and then you'll know the truth by the fourth day. I stood in the hallway staring at the basement door, sweat prickling my back though I had not touched it. His voice echoed in my skull, you're wondering what waits below, you're wondering if you'll survive the choice when it comes. And I knew then that whatever game had been set in motion would not end until I obeyed. I told myself I wouldn't do it, that I could resist the lure of the basement, that I could gather my things, break a window, force my way out into the cold air beyond, and leave the cursed inheritance behind. But the house fought me with every attempt. The windows would not break, the glass flexed like rubber beneath my blows. The chimney was sealed, the attic hatch nailed shut, every path narrowing until all roads led back to the basement door. It became a presence in my mind, a pressure I felt. Even when I tried to distract myself with food or books or sleep, the cassettes never stopped appearing. Each morning I woke to find another place, somewhere obvious, as though guiding me like breadcrumbs, and each one in his calm, measured voice described my resistance, predicted my failures, until the predictions were no longer prophecies but commands. You tried the window, he said, but it bent beneath your hands. You screamed, but no one heard. You sat down on the floor exhausted, and now you're listening to me tell you that it's time. The final tape appeared on the fifth night, resting on my pillow. When I opened my eyes, the label in my grandfather's handwriting. Read the choice. With trembling fingers I loaded it into the player. The hiss of static gave way to his voice, heavy with finality. Tonight you will stand before the basement door. Tonight you must decide whether to enter or remain, and if you remain you will live here in the house until your body withers away. You will listen to these tapes until your mind is nothing but an echo, but if you open the door you will begin again, and maybe, just maybe, you will understand. I threw the player across the room, the cassette ejecting and spinning under the dresser, rage boiling in me. I shouted at the walls, at the ceiling, at the silent furniture, what do you want from me? Why me? Why this house? But no answer came, only the oppressive stillness and the gnawing truth that I had no choice but to obey. That night I found myself in the hallway, the floorboards groaning beneath my steps, the cassette player clutched like a talisman in my sweaty hand. I stood before the basement door staring at the heavy iron latch. They are colder here than anywhere else in the house, my breath fogging faintly though it was midsummer. My hand hovered over the lock. I could feel the weight of all the tapes behind me, thousands of whispered predictions pressing me forward. I whispered to myself, don't do it, walk away, but my fingers moved of their own accord, closing around the latch, pulling it free. The door creaked open, and a black breath of air rolled out like the exhale of something long buried. I clicked on the flashlight, my beam cutting into the darkness, stairs descending into stone, the walls damp with moss, the smell of earth, and something acrid like burned plastic. I took the first step, the wood groaning, the sound swallowed by the heavy silence, then another and another, until the door swung shut behind me with a slam that made me jump. I turned the beam down the steps and froze, because at the bottom of the staircase sat a chair, and on the chair was another cassette player, this one newer, silver and gleaming as if it had just been unboxed, a tape already inside, the play button waiting. I descended each step slower than the last until I stood before it, my knees trembling. I pressed play, static crackled, then a voice emerged, not my grandfather's, but my own voice, recorded and calm. Hello, it said. I know you're scared, I know you're wondering if you've lost your mind, but you haven't. You've done everything exactly as you were supposed to. You inherited the house, you listened to the tapes, and now you've come to the basement because this is where it always ends and where it always begins. I staggered back, nearly dropping the flashlight. My voice continued steady and inexorable. You're asking how this is possible, how I could speak to you from the past before the tapes were made. But the truth is simple, there is no past, there is no future, there is only this loop, this cycle written into the bones of the house, into the blood of our family. You're me and I am you, and we have always been here. My throat constricted. I tried to shout no, but the sound scraped out as a whisper. The voice pressed on, unrelenting. You will record the tapes, you will place them in the house, you will write the labels in a hand that trembles with age, and when the time comes your grandson will arrive and hear them just as you did, and he will descend into the basement just as you have, and he will hear his own voice waiting for him. The flashlight flickered, my stomach lurched while burning my throat. I screamed, stop, 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 but the player continued inexorable calm. You don't believe me, but look to your left. Trembling, I turned the beam to the wall, their shelves lined with hundreds of cassettes stacked neatly in rows, my handwriting on every one of them, not my grandfather's, mine. Aged, shaky, and even, I staggered forward, grabbed one at random, flipped it over. The label read, for you, the same words as the first tape I had listened to days ago, the same sharp handwriting I had mistaken for his. I dropped it as if it burned me, stumbling back, the truth crashing over me, relentless, brutal. I had recorded them, I would record them. I was both prisoner and jailer. The voice of the tape, my voice droned on, tonight you will make the choice. As I did before you, you will sit in the chair, you will begin recording, and when the time comes you will tell him the same words, and he will face the same door you face now, and in this way the house remains alive. I clutched my head, rocking back and forth, muttering no, 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 but the air in the basement thickened, pressing me down, the shelves of tapes looming like a mausoleum built from my own future. The flashlight died, plunging me into black. The cassette player clicked silent, and for the first time there was no voice, just the pounding of my heart. I don't know how long I sat there in the dark, minutes, hours, maybe days, the weight of inevitability crushing me until my hands moved almost without my consent, reaching for the recorder, pressing the red button, my lips forming words In a steady, calm tone, hello, if you're hearing this, then the house is yours. I know that because it had to be, and right now you're sitting in the study with the box on your lap. And you've already opened it, and you're listening carefully, wondering how I know. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.